I need to make some.
So picked up this Fab 9 intercooler for cheap. Was missing a bracket, so gonna make one. Looked around at the scrap aluminum I have. This piece is just about the same as that, but way too big, so we're gonna cut this down into just a straight piece. I'll weld that on there, drill it, and then luckily Chelsea's car is here, so I can just fab it up inside and not outside in the moisture. All right, so I got my machine started up. I just did a test weld, which is this one up here at the top, just to make sure that everything's kind of feeling correct. So I'm just gonna basically send it. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a couple tack welds just to get this into place. And then I'll place it on Chelsea's car, make sure everything's lined up, the angles are correct, and then send it from there. All right, so I got a couple tacks. They're not great at all. Like I'm having a hard time even getting it to flux at all. But the angles are correct. I'm actually gonna drill this later on. So I have one bolt in right now, and then this one, all I'm gonna do is come back through in here and then just mark it. Another thing that you could do is you could also use a punch. I don't have the one that just clicks and indents the metal. So for right now, I'm just going to hit it with a marker. We'll take it off, drill it. It looks to be just about a 1/2 inch drill bit that I'm gonna have to use for this. But other than that, the welds are on there. They're not great, but I did test it off camera and same as that, didn't move. So I'm just gonna send it. Okay. So the Fab 9 intercooler, this one mounts up with the tow hook bars. So you take out, I believe it's the front one, the front inner. It is the front inner, right? Yeah, it's those, and that's actually where it sits. But if you have tow hooks, this needs to go above it. So take off your tow hooks, put this on, and then sandwich that on. I'm gonna do that now. So let's get this out of the way. All right, for right now, since I'm just doing mock-up, I'm just gonna put this on without the tow hooks. Also, they're disgusting. And that's it. So as you can see, it's just that one bolt that holds it on. We do have clearance on our power steering line as well that sits right up on over it, but it tucks in there just fine. Doesn't even hit the AC, so that's all mounted. Now, I know it doesn't really matter right now, but I want to put it on the front bumper. Now, another thing that I forgot to mention is because this is Chelsea's older front bumper, we already did shave down the tabs up here in the front, and that pushes everything right up into it. Now, this is probably sagging quite a bit as well. It's been off the car, like laying on the ground, because we just don't have room while we're fabricating. So, kind of is what it is right now. So, there you go though, it's in. So right now I am missing the radiator and the sway bar. I'm gonna install that first because, as I kick that over, I'm gonna install this first. This is a NB Racing Beat sway bar. We have brand new bushings. Ordered those just the other day to install. Now, yes, this is an NB. This is an NA. If you didn't see the last videos, we have an NB subframe in here, but we have adjustable end links. You can do this with adjustable end links on an NA anyways, but if you were to use stock ones, they would not work because they are not positioned correctly. So let's throw this in and we'll get that lined up. Okay, so I'm going to use the new bushing grease that came with the bushings that I bought for the used sway bar that I bought. So what we're gonna do is just add a little bit of grease to the inside of both of these, slip these on, and then just a little bit on the outside, if I remember correctly. Actually, I don't think that goes onto the outside at all, just the inside. And then we're gonna throw that onto the car. Now, one thing you do wanna be conscious of when you go to put this on is that you're putting it in this way. There have been a few times that I've put in the sway bar with it down, just hanging, and then thinking, oh, I could just bring it up. And then you end up hitting the control arm. So make sure that you put it in this way first. So on this side with the car up, I've just snaked this side up and through. And then I'm gonna make sure that these go up over the tie rod. And now we can slide this on. Okay, so the sway bar is in. We have an issue. So this is the extended one, so you could adjust how stiff you want it to be, and as you can see, I end up hitting the sway bar, or the coilover itself. So if you look kind of closely, you should be able to see it. I marked 12.5 millimeters out from here, and I think I'm just gonna end up cutting this off and rounding it down so that I have enough room for travel in this area. I don't see why there would be any other issues with it being there. From what I'm looking at, I should have plenty of clearance. And I mean, this is kind of where it's actually going to be sitting. This is fully out. But if it really comes down to it down the road, I could just throw back in the stock one. I know 100% that works, but the stock one matches up with this bolt anyways. So got this for cheap. I'm just gonna cut it and go from there. Okay, so I kind of have the sway bar held down, and just so I have markings on the other side, I have this at 12.5. Yeah, so all I'm gonna do is just scrape it along from the edge. Just to give myself kind of a radius. So that's how far out I want it to go at maximum. And then I'll end up rounding it off or whatnot from there. So let's get to cutting. Okay, so I have this trimmed up now. It's got enough of a radius that it shouldn't affect it structurally. You always want to have rounded edges because if they're sharp, generally they will crack more. Or actually, never mind, that's mainly for holes. So I rounded everything to try and make it look somewhat LEM style looking, but we'll paint this, we'll get it back into the car, and then we can get to the intercooler piping. This little tab here that normally sticks out straight, it's actually hitting the tire when we're only at about there. So one thing that we did with Chelsea's to help give her a little bit more clearance is this. So as you can see, we totally trimmed that entire pillar. So like where those two bolts were, and that it normally sticks out to about here. So we gave her way more room and then just sealed up all of this with seam sealer. So for right now, I'm gonna get out the angle grinder and I'm just gonna start cutting and grinding away what I can on my chassis, and then we'll seam seal it up. All right, so this is exactly what I was looking for. Just enough of a concave to go in and help give me a little bit more clearance. So again, I'll come back in here. I'll actually, I gotta read the can because I'm not sure if you gotta have primer on this to add the seam sealer or if it's the other way. But regardless, gonna clean this up and get that sealed. Put the seam sealer onto the edge here and sealed that all up. Now, the main reason why you guys want to do this is to avoid getting rust in your quarter panels because, well, as everyone knows, rust is really, yeah, so we want to avoid that. So you put this stuff and seal that up so no water can get through. So here we have the entire outside covered up. I have just a thin line on that there, but once I actually started having the open edges to where I had to fold everything in, went a little bit heavier on it just to make sure that it completely sealed. It's all sealed on there. So now I have to do the other side. This is kind of, this is one of those things that's really a pain, but if you're doing this the right way, it's really the way to do it, because otherwise you're gonna get water in your frame and just a bunch of rust and stuff like that. And I don't know where we're going with this car in the long run. So